So kia ora koutou, called Jen Baird, taku ingoa. I am the General Manager of Growth. And I have a couple of hundred people in my team, and we look after all of the forward-looking growth functions for the city, all the city planning, and a whole load of regulatory functions in relation to both growth and the effective running of the city. So I often say that I've got all the good stuff. I've got dogs and the gambling policy and alcohol policy and prostitution in my area. But one of the other things that we do a lot of in my team is think about what Hamilton is going to look like for the future. And in 30 or 50 years' time, where will we be growing? Where will the houses be? Where will the new businesses be? Hamilton, as many of you will know, is geographically really quite small. There's only 2 territorial authorities in New Zealand that are smaller than Hamilton, Napier and Kawerau. Is that better? There you go. So Napier and Kawerau are the only places that are smaller than Hamilton. We don't have a lot of greenfield land left in our city, and so in 30 years' time we will be pretty much built right up to the edge. So we're doing a lot of work at the moment, a lot of work with the government and in partnership with our neighbours and with iwi to think about what a greater Hamilton looks like, what a metropolitan scale city looks like for Hamilton. So it's expected that in not too distant future, Hamilton will be a city of 300,000 people. We'll be servicing an area of 500,000. So as a city, what do we need to be thinking about now? What decisions do we need to be making to make sure that that city is livable and attractive and still growing and delivering people what they want in the years to come? So those are some of the decisions that we need as a council, we need to be making right now. And Peacock, where we're going now to see Peacock. Peacock is a suburb that has been talked about in Hamilton for decades. And last year, the council, after a number of years of really hard work and business cases and working with the government, last year the council made a decision to invest in the Peacock area as our new greenfield new greenfield area. So the expectation is that when it's full, Peacock will have around 20,000 people living there. We are putting in all of the infrastructure to enable 20,000 people to live in that space. It is an enormous piece of work. It has also been made a little bit cheaper for Hamilton through the government's Housing Infrastructure Fund. It's a 10-year interest-free loan of $290 million. It will save the city $65 to $70 million over a 10-year period, which is great news. And Chris, when we get out there, Chris Allen, who looks after the development team, will talk a little bit more about the actual infrastructure. But Peacock is not just about pipes and roads and bridges. It is about people, and that is what growth is. We wouldn't have growth if it wasn't for people wanting to bring their businesses here, wanting to school their children here, wanting to study at our university, and wanting to live their lives in our city. So Hamilton continues to outpace much of New Zealand in terms of growth. The population estimates last year we grew by 3,900 people. It's about 70 new people a week. And they bring their wallets and they bring their cars and they bring their children and their dogs. So there's a lot of things to think about in terms of how we manage that level of extra people in our city. So what I might talk about really briefly is how we are thinking about and planning for the long-term growth of Hamilton. We are part of the Hamilton to Auckland Corridor Plan, which is a unique collaboration in New Zealand between the government and our region, or the other councils in our region, and iwi. So there's a lot of stakeholders at the table for this project, and it is moving very, very quickly, and it really is speaking to the government's desire to maximise the infrastructure investment between Auckland and Hamilton, but maximise the wellbeing benefits that a real focus in the area will deliver. So for Hamilton, the first project off the first cab off the rank, or the first project that we're working on, is a thing called the Metro Spatial Plan. It is a high-level project that looks at the Greater Hamilton area and starts to make some informed calls about where we should be putting houses and businesses, and what growth looks like, what transport corridors look like, and those sorts of things for the future. It is as I said, it's a really collaborative process. It is moving at pace, and it is already starting to show us where we should be talking to our neighbours about growing, what growth could look like, and what scenarios we have available to us as a city, and decisions that we need to be making going forward. Alongside that, the political wing continues to have conversations with Waikato and Waipa, who are right on our border, about how we make good decisions about planning around our edges. So there is a red line on a map. It's the boundary of Hamilton, and things can be very different on one side of that line than the other, but our politicians and certainly at a staff level, we work very closely with our neighbours to make sure that we are maximising the opportunity for the growth of Hamilton into the future. And that means having good agreements and good conversations about what's happening either side of that line.
Development, so I'm an engineer by trade, so I understand people, but Jen said it's not all about infrastructure, but for me it is sometimes when I'm doing that because of the money we put into it. Just a little bit of a 101 on transport, because this is basically a transport infrastructure project. I use the word transport deliberately because it's not all about roads, it's about walking and cycling and public transport and cars. So we use the word transport to say it's for everybody. So just a bit of a 101. We've got two types of roads in the city. One are roads that we own and control, local roads, and the other one are state highways. So the state highway is Cobham Drive is State Highway 1. We've got a few other state highways in town. We don't own those and control those. Those are controlled by the New Zealand Transport Agency. They fund those 100% in our city. All of the rest of the roads are ours, and for our maintenance we get 50% of our funding from that agency and 50% from the ratepayers. For projects like this, we can go and get that same sort of subsidy deal as well. So half paid for by central government, half paid for by us as a city. So at times we get better deals, and on this one here we've actually got a much better deal, so a heck of a lot of this project here has been paid for by central government because it's on a state highway. So what we're looking at there, this is the last component of our ring road. So for the city it's been a $100 million investment over about the last 5+ years, right from Crosby Road at the top of the city all the way down, and you would have been living in here and seeing it progressively open. It's been stopped at Cambridge Road there for a while. Well, we've been getting this project here off the ground. Part of the hold up was just looking to get a really good deal out of transit and the NZTA and the subsidy. So you can see a picture of what we're building here. It's also on your attachment there, but largely this is going to be an interchange, so what we call a grade separation, where we have one road going over the other. So you can see Cobham Drive is actually going to go over the ring road. So if you see that fence just in the distance here, that's the corridor for the ring road, and there'll be a large interchange here. Finished by when, Pune?
Finished by July 2021.
By July 2021. Yep. And there'll be a little stub ready to then sort of punch into the Peacock growth area. So as Jen has said, it was really important for the city. We want to make sure we don't run out of space to grow. For the city, half of our growth is through infill and growing up, but it's greenfield as well. We needed a new growth cell. Peacocks has been in the planning for ages, and we've now got the funding package together to, I call it, punch into Peacocks. Some things that we're doing on the Peacocks project around par sites and look at rehabilitating those. Naming opportunities, I think was what you mentioned, Muna. So certainly the bridge is something that we'll be looking for iwi to provide a name for the bridge. When we get there, it's a really significant site for iwi, and I had never understood this before. Like, gateways to me is when you drive into a town and what's the gateway to a city, but it turns out this bridge here is, in the Tainui terms, is going to be the gateway with the Waikato River. So as you're coming down the river, this is your first big gateway into the city. So it's real significance to iwi in terms of a gateway and naming rights, etc.
Hey Chris, why we've got Warri Drive crossing over, Cobden Drive crossing over Warri in that way? Why that way, not the other way around, and considering there's got a convenient approach to the river?
It was really complicated, but it's just the best way to do it when you put all the factors in and costs and everything, traffic management.
Yeah.
So when you put all of that together, there's a lot of work in that. That's the best way to do it.
Okay.
And also taking our ring road underneath, it really helps with all of the walking and cycling.
Okay.
Like if the ring road was going over the top and then you've got to get the cyclists up and over, it's not as great an outcome. So it's a better outcome having our local roads underneath, and then all the walking and cycling is flat, and that's a lot better as well.
We've got more questions, we'll ask later.
You can see it's about 6 kilometres from the central city. A really important growth cell for us, and a lot of people say it gives better balance to the city and the growth to the north and support for the CBD. On the right hand side there you can see our program that shows all the different things we're looking to do in the Peacock growth area over the next 10 years and the costs. And in the bottom left you can see a schematic of the roads punching into Peacocks. So just to orientate you, the ring road, they'll put a stub in the ring road, because the ring road's going under, it will be down a little bit, and we'll then come almost straight ahead from that stub. And if you look around, you can probably just see through the trees the house. The new road goes right through the middle of that house. So,
We own the house is owned by us, Chris.
yeah, but they're going on holiday next week.
You quickly sneak it through, eh?
Yeah. So part of our Peacocks program is about 60 odd $1 million worth of land to purchase. So it's really disruptive for those people that we're buying land off. We're in a property purchase program at the moment. I guess we're heading to a start date of this project about the end of next year. So we've got about 18 months to complete the property purchase. They're always difficult conversations in terms of compensation, etc. But there's a proper process that we're following through there.
It's legislatively managed, the process.
Yeah. So look, in terms of this project, like Jen, I think it said that we're enjoying a $290 million interest-free loan from government, but embedded in that $290 million is about $180 million of subsidy that we don't have to pay back. So that's the NZTA subsidy. So we've got a quite a good deal for that. It's really, subsidy doesn't come as of right, but you've got to work really hard to prove your case and business case and get subsidy. But we've won subsidy on it, so there's a lot of central government money in this road too, to reflect that eventually it'll be a really important arterial road that'll connect up with the Southern Link state highway system long time in the future. This bridge here that we're going, I think it's a really challenging bridge. With our engagement with iwi, putting piers into the river is not a great thing to do. So as a consequence, it's a really long span to get from this bank. You can see it drops quite a lot onto the other side. So it'll be a combination of dropping down here a little bit, but being quite high, 20 metres or so on the other side. We've got a lot of seismic sort of risk on the other side that we have to deal with, a lot of potential liquefaction, which just means we've got to engineer that right and spend some money to get that right. The bridge deck is, at the moment, it's something just under 30 metres wide, which gives us lots of opportunity to look at how we allocate that road space. So the current thinking is it won't be all for cars. There could be bus lanes, and there'll be good walking and cycling lanes. A really big focus has been walking and cycling in this whole area under the bridge, and how we can connect up the Te Awa cycle paths, our river paths, So there's a lot of work gone into this about walking and cycling and how that can be good. In fact, if you look at the second page on this handout, you can see some cross sections of the bridge there. I apologise, some of it will be hard to see, but you know, I think it's something like there's a 110 metre span that this bridge has got to get to the other side, and then there's a structure on the other side of about 115 to get over that sort of that riverbank there. You can see on your top right hand one, we're looking at a proposal on this side of the bridge to put an up and over walking and cycling bridge. So the top two drawings there are the walking and cycling bridge and not the main bridge, and that's just to really make sure we've got a good connection on either side for walking and cycling. The bridge, we've been through a really big process with a lot of stakeholders and including technical, to find out the form of bridge and engage with council. Because of that long span, our options are limited. So this bridge is actually called a Y bridge, if you like. If you look at the one support that we got on the other side, it's in the shape of a Y. So it's quite an innovative bridge, challenging but exciting to build.
With lots of cable stays on it initially, but there's a population of indigenous long-tailed bats in this area, and they don't see cables as things that they can fly around. They'll see a whole set of cables as a brick wall. And so part of the design process for this was to minimise the impact on the environment as well. And so there's a lot of work happening in terms of the ecology for peacock. It has quite a series of gullies in the area as well. And since we started this project, there has been a tide of change in terms of the conversation around the environment, and the team are adapting to that and changing the conversations that we're having with developers in the process, and widening the esplanades and having more conversations about the type of lights that we're going to put in to have the light go back from the river rather than towards the river to disturb the bat population. So ecology and the environment and the biodiversity, all those sorts of things, are a fundamental part of the conversation to our development of peacock.
So you mentioned ahead that it's still under discussion with NZTA, so is that 110 fixed now, or is it likely to increase?
Fixed.
So there's no more negotiation, because you mentioned negotiations.
No, all the agreements are in place for that one and for this one.
Right, okay, so 290 less 110 leaves 180, which we have to repay in 10 years' time.
Yep.
So we don't repay it in 10 years' time, so we're drawing it down bit by bit as we need it, and each time we draw it down, that bit is repayable in 10 years' time. So we haven't taken the whole lot and then it all gets paid back.
So the 10 years is also staggered, so if you drew 50% year one, it's 10 years from year one. If you drew the 25% year two, it's 10 years from year two?
Yes.
Okay.
Is the 10 years interest free, is that from the time each amount is drawn?
Yes.
Or is it,
If it's not fully repaid in 10 years, then we would refinance that, but at low interest rates.
You would refinance, so it will not
Whatever's
go on to
left that hasn't been repaid.
Okay, so it will not go on to rates. It will go. It will be
The interest cost, if there was interest costs, we didn't fully repay it in 10 years,
Yes.
the interest costs would be over time and paid for by ratepayers.
Okay, so how does DCs come in? Because as the development is finished and developers come along and start to subdivide or do whatever it is, then they start to pay DCs. So how will the DCs be siloed towards paying for the loan?
All DCs that come in through council go towards debt repayment. They don't get used for the cost of running the city.
Okay, so any future DCs that's coming in from development in Peacocks will be going towards
Correct.
paying
100% of it.
100%?
Yep.
Yeah. So
Got your word for it? Everybody, witness?
Yes, Councillor Nancy.
Yeah.
The legislative model requires us to attribute and allocate the cost of an asset investment to growth for the developers to pay for.
Yes.
They'll pay back that debt that we have to borrow for that portion. There's a portion of that interest-free loan that will be paid back by development contributions. There's also a portion that's argued its level of the service, that it improves the overall network for the broader ratepayer, and that part gets paid for by the ratepayer in the long run if we don't have the interest-free loan. But with the interest-free loan, both the developer gets the benefit of that and so does the ratepayer until such time as either we repay it or we refinance it again, and then that portion will be funded by the DCs that we've calculated and or rates. So it is all allocated legislatively to make sure no one's covering any other person's costs.
Yeah.
I understand these will be the highest DCs in the city at the moment. These ones, 700.
No, Rotakari would be the highest.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? So development contributions go directly to paying down debt until such time as that debt is then drawn on again to grow other infrastructure, is that right?
So basically, development contributions are paid for. So a development contribution is paid for based on the current infrastructure we've already put in place to drive growth, as well as a projection for future infrastructure. So some of the DCs we're getting today are for debt we haven't even drawn down yet, and we've done a present value calculation to identify it. So not only is it identified against the project here and now, it's identified against the project historically, and in the future, based on an estimated average interest rate to reflect the fact that the right person pays for that growth at the right time. So a person that builds a property out there in 20 years' time is going to pay DCs, or the subdivision in 20 years' time is going to pay DCs. The DCs have been calculated against the projected costs, and that will come against that debt. So it's all allocated both intergenerationally as well as against the project to ensure that it's fair and reasonable. Things change over time, of course, but every 3 years we go back and look at our development contribution policy, repump the growth numbers in based on projected growth, as well as Chris's team provides an update on the capital requirements, and that gets reassessed every 3 years, and that's why you'll see the development contributions changing. The reason that the last DC policy had a big step up, to Anna's comment about the highest DCs, well, Rotakari is because our capital program has had to step up to meet the growth demands. So the top line of the DC calculation is the capital program, the bottom line is the growth number. And so if that capital program increases significantly, then the top number increases, and if the growth number then increases at the bottom, it's a division in, and that drives an increased cost. This council at the moment, and this is a decision for future councillors to make, have only capped certain DCs. So we're legislative got to run a model that's pure. You can't mess with the model, but what councillors can make a decision on, if they want to promote certain activities, they can then make a decision to cap development contributions. If you cap a development contribution, what you're saying is the ratepayer has to pay for it. Now, there's really good reasons for the ratepayer may want to pay for it, but we've got to ask the question of ratepayer. Are you prepared to subsidise some growth because you believe that the better value for the economy or the city is there and we're prepared to do so? And that's part of the 10-year plan discussion.
You'll no doubt have noticed that there is a fair bit of development still happening in established suburbs. So about over half of the new homes being built in Hamilton at the moment are being built in existing suburbs. We call that infill. Last year I think it was just over 60% of new houses built were higher density homes as well. So duplexes, townhouses, apartments, that sort of thing. So 40% detached and 60% more higher density. So what we're seeing in our city is some densification. There are a variety of views on whether this is a good or a bad thing. There are views in terms of what looks good and what isn't attractive in terms of that infill. But we have a district plan that is really enabling of development. So we have a lot of developers in Hamilton who are very active. They're very committed to the city, they're committed to growth in the city, and they are taking the opportunities that the district plan delivers them to build higher density homes. We are having quite a lot more conversations about apartments in the central city in particular, and how do we encourage that kind of living to create a nighttime economy in the CBD. There is a project that just got signed off by council a couple of months ago to create, or start the work to build a collaborative vision for the central city for the next 20 years, so that we can create some investment pathways, if you will, both for council and for private developers to continue the renaissance, if you will, for the central city. What else was I going to say about infill? So from a building of houses perspective, there is a lot of infill, but year on year we continue to break the records in terms of the amount of building consents being issued. So we thought last year was off the scale. It was about 1,440 building consents issued. We're already, every month this year, we have consented more more than that, the projections are that we'll be above that limit again. So we at this point are not seeing any slowdown in terms of developers' appetite to continue to build in Hamilton. One of the key parts of our ability to continue to grow the city is the relationship that we have with Waikato Tainui. We have a joint management agreement with protection of the river, but we have, that's the formal part of our relationship, but we have worked really hard to be collaborative and kind of deeply engaged and supportive of what they're trying to achieve and vice versa. And Mona is going to talk a little bit more about how we do that and how the relationship has evolved and the importance of that to the city.
So my name is Muna Wharawhara. I forgot to say who I was at the reception lounge. So I am the Amorangi Māori in Hamilton City Council. I've been there for about 5 years now and thoroughly enjoying the role. So I thought as an introduction, given that we've just visited Peacocks and the development and the growth that's happening there, as you would acknowledge, there are a number of cultural sites throughout the Peacocks area. In particular, on the western side of the river, you've got the likes of Nukuhau Pa site, you've got Whatsukoruru, Kairokiroki, and also sites of significance to Māori, such as Mangako, Tukutuku, and also Tireke. So there are a number of culturally significant sites to Māori throughout the city. We are working closely with Māori on having those sites recognised. So we value the relationship that we have with iwi, with Waikato Tainui, and also with the hapu. So at a lower level with the hapu, namely the 5 hapu that have traditional links with Hamilton City, Ngāti Mahanga, Ngāti Wairere, Ngāti Haua, Ngāti Koroki Kahukura, and also Ngāti Taminu Po. So we have a number of relationships at a iwi level, a hapu level, and also with Mātau Waka. So we recognise that Mātau actually represent 75% of the Māori population in Hamilton. So they outnumber the iwi and hapu within the traditional lands. So just to talk about the different relationships that we have with iwi, hapu and Mātau Waka, we don't like to think of them as stakeholders. They are our partners, and we have a number of partnership agreements with iwi, hapu and also Mātau Waka at different levels. So with Waikato Tainui, they have mana whakahaere status, which is through legislation. So we have a number of legislative responsibilities to Waikato Tainui, in particular around the river. As Jen had mentioned, around the joint management agreement that we have with them, around co-management of the river. So the 16 kilometres of the Waikato River that flows through Hamilton City, we work closely with Waikato Tainui to ensure that we're delivering on the health and well-being of the river. Waikato Tainui view the river as being their awa tupuna, or their ancestor. So we give effect to the river, the vision and the strategy for the river, and working in partnership with Waikato Tainui. We did something adventurous about 3-4 years ago, Richard? Around the JMA. So the JMA, the relationship around the joint management agreement was strictly around the river. So we did something adventurous and something cool, and we extended the powers of the JMA. And we actually, in partnership with Waikato Tainui, actually extended the JMA to include other things like cultural projects, social projects, and also economic projects. So it wasn't just about the river. So the partnership just wasn't about the river. We grew it to include those other areas because Waikato Tainui have an interest in those areas as well. So we work in a real partnership way with Waikato Tainui. Just yesterday we had a co-governance hui. So we have a responsibility to meet with Waikato Tainui at a governance level at least twice a year. So yesterday we met with them when we talked about the growth that's happening in the city. We talked about the developments. We talked about economic opportunities. We talked about the water. So there's a lot of discussion points that we have at an iwi level. So that's one of the cool things, or the cool relationships that we have at a iwi level. At a hapu level, so those are the sub-tribes that have particular interests or traditional links with different parts of Hamilton City. We have a service level agreement with them. So we well, I don't like to use the word consult or the word stakeholders because they are partners with us. So we have a relationship around with our hapus around the development and the growth that happens at a local level. So in terms of resource consents, heritage applications and those kind of things, they work with developers. We work with the hapus, so they have opportunities to have input into anything that's happening in the city, in particular around peacocks. If I use peacocks as an example, around the roading networks, we have a tangata whenua working group that advises our Chris's team and Eva Lisa's team around cultural appropriateness. We have Te Hao, Te Whenua Kirikiri Roa that works with the developers and also with staff around some of the developments, protected developments that will happen in the Peacocks area. So, and also iwi around the river that flows through the Peacocks area. So we're engaging at a high level with the different partners at a iwi hapu and also Mātāwaka level. And just recently as October last year, we introduced into council Māori representation through the form of Māngai Māori. So we have Māori representation on our committees of council, on finance, growth and infrastructure, on regulatory and hearings committee, and also our communities and services committee. So we have Māori representation, they have a vote and they also have a voice, and I think they've made a huge difference to council and the way that staff actually report back to council. We never had in our council reports a section around how we engage with Māori, but we do now, and that's been well appreciated by iwi. So there's a number of things that we do, so I just wanted to ensure give assurance that we do work with iwi, we do work with hapu, and we do work with Mātāwaka. They are our valued partners and will continue to be our valued partners. Any questions? Yep.
The meetings that you mentioned twice a year, are councillors invited to attend those?
Yeah. So the structure of the co-governance meetings is that we have 5 members, elected members that represent Hamilton City Council, and from Waikato Tainui we have 3 members from the executive committee, and they form the co-governance committee that meets at least twice a year.
Ko Helen Paki Tapuinga. I am the Community Services Manager within the Community Group. I'm actually standing in for Lance Vaught today. He's our General Manager for Community Group. We've heard a lot about pipes and development today, and those things are really important. Once we've got pipes in the ground and water running, we start to look at what are the community and social value that we can provide within Hamilton City. So Rotatuna, we have got most of the pipes in the ground, so the next stage of development is really around community facilities and services. So here is a really good example of partnership projects as well. To our right, you can see Rotatuna High School at the far end. Oh, just over here, sorry. Well, it's a little bit disoriented there. I thought that didn't look like the high school. Over here to the to your right is Rotatuna High School. That's a junior and senior high school. One of the things that we have gone into partnership with Ministry of Education on is the development of the Peak. I don't know how many of you know about that. That's a forecourt indoor recreation centre. It provides both school and community use. So Instead of Hamilton City Council building facilities, sometimes what we do is enter into partnerships with other organisations and agencies. So Hamilton City Council provided a grant of $4 million towards that development. That was around 50%. We have, last year we had over 300,000 community users. That's aside from the school students, so very high use, very important facility. Futsal is one of the fastest growing indoor sports in Hamilton. Previously to the peak, they were using over 7 facilities across the city, and are now largely this has like become the home of futsal. So it's really filled a large gap. To the right here we have what you see is the near completion of sports park. So there are 5 sports fields going into that park. Mostly football fields and also 2 cricket pitches. That'll be open to the community by the end of the year. We've got changing rooms and toilets going in before December. And you can see some road construction. Road construction over this side. We've got Somerset residential village, so there's a lot of development happening in this area, and where we're sited right now is the Rotorua Town Centre. So just behind me to my left, council owns some of this land alongside developers who will be developing, owning it retail, and it'll be the intention is that it's real village feel retail, so not your mass developed kind of mass block shops as at the base. There is room for that further up, but this part of the town centre is designed as more of a village, street shops, and there are community facilities programmed here. So a library is just on this side of the sports park, and potentially private development of a pool on the right hand side. So council has done a lot of engagement with the community in Rotorua around design of these facilities, and we're about to enter into an expression of interest phase for private development of a pool out here, and we're currently designing the library hub, community hub. So one of the things that we heard from the community was that they wanted spaces to recreate but also to meet and connect socially. And there is a view around libraries that with the development of e-books and technology, that there is no longer a requirement for libraries, but actually we have around 1 million visits to our libraries. They're one of our most visited facilities in the city, and they're not only and we still have a large number of book issues. So Chartwell Library, which is nearby here, has the largest number of visitors and book issues in the Central Library has the most number of visitors, but Chartwell Library has the most number of issues, and so Rotorua Library will ease some of that pressure on that library there. We do have 6 libraries around the city. So the library has also been designed with social spaces for people to meet and connect. I think that's... Any questions on that?
Is there any, aside from the pool, what portion is currently unfunded of the development? Is everything budgeted for and funded and going ahead except for the pool so far?
That's correct.
Can you just repeat that stat about the library? Was it 1 million visits?
It's close to 1 million, just under 1 million visits.
For all libraries?
For all libraries, across all our library network.
You wouldn't know how many, did you say how many book issues that was?
I don't have that in my head, but I can get back to you.
Cool.
And in terms of the library, are they looking at a similar design to the other ones, or are they using it as a chance to maybe be a little bit...
Yeah, we're looking at a chance to be a little bit more innovative. So none of our libraries have been purpose-built. They've all been buildings that we've set libraries up into. So this will be our first purpose-built library. And we are designing it to be more of a hub space so that people, there is that focus on technology and books. People want to come in to read, but they also want places to meet. Yeah. So we've visited a number of libraries around New Zealand to look at good examples of that. And we've done a lot of... we had a lot of conversations with the local community.
What did you see was a good example?
Te Manawa Library in Auckland was quite a good example. We also went to Te Awamutu. That was a good example of quite a smaller library that's got different spaces set up in it, and was very cost effective.
Yes. The pool complex, which is clearly being developed as a partnership with community groups. Who then takes over the responsibility of running and maintaining it?
Yeah, so it's not a partnership with community groups. Council does own the land. We're actually seeking expressions of interest from a private developer, so it'll be a commercial pool.
Have you considered using the high school for a swimming pool?
Yeah, so in Ministry of Education has a policy where they no longer build or fund pools. So any pools that exist with current schools are because they've had pools from the past that they've been able to continue to maintain. And also they don't have the land space for a pool. That's one of the reasons why they've built up. Yes, Nancy?
So in Rototuna, the community development that's currently taken place has taken a long time to happen. And I guess the residents in Rototuna have had to wait for a long time for schools and things like that. So going back to Peacocks now, when we're developing it, are we taking this lesson over there and developing the community services alongside the subdivisions and so on that's happening, or are we waiting till it's all completed and then wait another 10 years before it happens?
No, so that's all. So we're working really closely with Jen's team around looking at what's required in Peacock. We have some existing facilities already in Peacock. We've got the Gallagher Pool. We've got a really good, that's on Ministry of Education land actually, so we have got a really good partnership with Ministry of Education there. If that was a pool that we could look at things like in the future, is there room to expand if it was required? We've still got a lot of space at Waterworld as a central pool, so it is about having those, it's not always about building new facilities in those areas, but making sure that there's good connections to existing facilities. We've got the Glenview Library there. It is a small library, but it still has a lot of capacity, and we're currently working with developers around park and reserve space. Yes.
So the peak, it's brilliant. It's also full. So would there be plans to develop a second indoor recreational facility for this area, or a community hall, for example? Or?
So one of the things when we look at facilities is we look at, like, city-wide and actually also regionally, because as you'll know, around a lot of sports you have people travel in and out, so they're not just Hamilton based, it is that wider regional focus. We've had a number of plans done, so the Waikato Regional Facility Sports Plan that is on the website if any of you are interested in looking at that, and they made a recommendation for a second facility post the peak. Council has in their 10-year plan funding to support the development of a facility potentially up at the university. So it wouldn't be here in Rototuna. It's unlikely to be here in Rototuna, but looking at other parts of the city. So it's looking for opportunities to partner with others versus taking on that responsibility ourselves.
Hey Helen, in 2015 we issued 1.6 million items from our libraries.
Thank you. I had it on a piece of paper, but
I got
thanks
Google.
very much. Excellent.
My best friend's a librarian.
Oh, great.
So I'm just nerding out about
Yes,
this.
I like libraries too. Over 1,000 hectares of land that we own in parks and reserve and natural gullies, and we have 196 parks across the city. So we have 50 sports fields. And football is the fastest growing sport, rugby is decreasing. I was anticipating lots of questions, so lots of stats.
I like the fact that we use a lot of swales here in Rototuna.
Yes.
Is that something that's been done for the Peacocks area as well?
Swale.
Yeah.
It's probably a question for Chris. So it really is about stormwater solutions and the change. There's been quite a lot of changes in terms of the type of stormwater solutions that is required. But Chris can talk about swales. Chris. Chris. Hey Chris. Chris. Any swales in Rototuna?
Any what, sorry?
Oh, any swales in Peacock?
Yep, there'll be. That's our future is swales.
Yeah, the stormwater solution, yes, future is swales.
And Chris, the amenity value of adding the amenity value to the swales, that's something we do a lot more regularly now in terms of the planting.
We're trying to integrate stormwater requirements with a bit of amenity and sort of walking paths, etc. But I think stormwater is a really serious issue now in terms of Waikato River and the quality of the river. So treating our stormwater to a really high standard to get out phosphorus and nitrogen and some of the things that have caused problems in the river is a real focus. So the way we do that is with wetlands and swales.
Here, and there are bridges. There are several bridges that run across to provide access to the park, and we'll have really good walkway connections from the school through to the town centre as well, and cycleways. Haripuki Playground, which is an example of one of our newer destination playgrounds. This playground was lobbied for a number of years, so there was really strong community drive to get a playground in Ruatutuna. Playgrounds provide huge community amenity, as you can imagine, very important facilities for families and children, and we're really trying to take an intergenerational approach with our playgrounds, so it's not just little kids that want to play. So we've also incorporated some elements, so often you'll see teenagers using this playground, and you'll also see some of the adults clambering over some of the equipment. It actually featured on What Now a couple of weeks ago, so maybe some of you saw that. We have currently around 5 destination playgrounds, I think, across the city, but neighbourhood playgrounds, which are really just smaller playgrounds. What makes a destination playground is people will maybe travel further to it. They all have a toilet, so if anyone does need to use the toilet, we do have a toilet here that you can use. And it just means people can stay longer. So if you wanted a longer experience at a playground, you might travel a bit further to one of those. But we also have a number of neighbourhood playgrounds around the city. And we are upgrading our neighbourhood playgrounds to provide really quality experiences. So an example of a neighbourhood playground would be the one at Steele Park. I don't know if any of you, the one that's just across from Duck Island, I'm sure you know where that is. And we've recently built one up in Hillcrest. There's a new destination playground at Hillcrest Stadium that's got the bike pumps and the hoops getting a lot of use at the moment, and we've had actually a lot of really positive feedback from the shops in that area who are getting increased business, so that's kind of an unintended benefit. So we've got a playgrounds program. We've got 5 million invested into playgrounds over the next 10 years. And that includes renewing playgrounds. When we renew a playground, because you often can't replace the equipment with the same equipment because the equipment's changing all the time, we use that as an opportunity to upgrade or make it a bit more unique as well. So we have playgrounds programmed and funded over the next 10 years. Playgrounds are another good example of partnerships. So we're very successful at getting funding from some of our philanthropic trusts who value these kind of experiences for our community, obviously. So all of these playgrounds of this nature have a contribution from other partners as well. In year 4, currently, we have a larger skate park playground experience funded, and I think that's for 2 million, and half of that is from funders. So our job as staff is to raise those funds over the next 2 years.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yes.
Someone who's got a 4-year-old grandson.
Sure.
And not that I'm a great favour of spending extra money. We may be deterrent with that.
Yep.
There's no heat sink. My grandson could outrun me from about 18 months
Yep.
old. You come down that slide, down that hill, and you're on the road before you can run. That could worry me.
Okay.
The skate
There's
park
no shelter.
playground, does that have a location yet?
Not yet. We are looking at something more in the central city. So we have got a number of skate parks and suburb areas. We're currently doing a renewal of Melville Skate Park this year. But we are looking for a city location that. If we do this really well, I've got friends who currently travel up to Auckland to use skate parks up there. So if we do this really well, it'll become a bit of our playgrounds are a visitor destination in themselves. We have people travel from out of the region to some of our destination playgrounds, so it does bring visitors into the city as well. So we're looking at a good quality skate park in the central city.
Can't play.
We've still got a little bit of work to do on location. Yeah.
Are there, if you look at the city in terms, like, as a map view, and then look at the layout of playgrounds, say, per suburb, are there any, like, gaps in suburbs which don't have that infrastructure?
Rotorua was a gap for a long time, which is why we've invested here. Currently there are no real gaps, probably in more in, so next year we're having a bit of a focus on the Glenview, Melville area.
1,000 connections to our wastewater system, and it's around 350 kilometres worth of pipes that are connected, and then 800 pipes that are connected through the city. So all of those pipes are underground, you can't see them, so they're our underground assets that we operate and maintain. We've got around 15,000 manholes, so you'll see those in the road, and often the road, when you're doing the roads, they make a noise when you go over them, but they're actually vital to our system. They're all engineered to make sure our reticulation, our wastewater pipes operate as they should. We only have one treatment plant, so this is it for the whole city. And when you notice, our city actually goes uphill, so you're literally pumping waste uphill, and we use pump stations across the city. There's around 140 of them. So yeah, I'm not going to say it, but you can think it in your head, and that's exactly what we do. And so it's really important that we get where our pipes and our network goes really well today and look after what we've got today. But as you heard Chris and Jen talk about the growth of tomorrow, where they are tomorrow, so that they're actually in the right places, the houses being built, for the industry being put in place, and so that we can continue to service how Hamilton needs to be serviced. And we're legislatively bound, so we have Local Government Act, the Health Act, Health and Safety Act, the Hazardous Chemicals Act, so we're very heavily regulated, and we do have 6 resource consents that we operate under this plant, all relating to discharge, air, noise.
So they're due for renewal 2027, that's going to be a big project.
Yeah.
To get discharged to the river, to continue that, it's going to be a big body of work.
Yeah, so that's a big, just to keep all of this going. So I'll leave it to Carl.
Hi everyone, my name's Carl Armstrong in the operations team at the treatment plant, so we work at both water and wastewater plants. So as Evelisa said, this is our one treatment plant, so we look after it, we upgrade it, look at all the cranes and activity out there, so there's a big upgrade happening at the moment. So basically everything comes here, and wastewater is all the stuff you could imagine it is, but a lot of it is water. So we're trying to screen out what we can. So this whole plant could be thought of as the bug farm, if the water plant could be thought of as the chemistry set. Think of it that way. You've got biology to keep happy, like in your stomach. So all the wastewater comes through, we screen out what we can't use, so that's grit. Lots of stuff you could imagine gets flushed down, that all goes to a sanitary landfill. A lot of stuff comes through, and you want all the bugs to come through and use it as further food to treat the wastewater. It's quite a cool system. So it's basically liquid and solid separation. All comes in as one mass. We let the liquid carry on through this way, the solids go that way. So solid wise, we screen out what we can't use in the digestion phase. That goes to the Turahia landfill at quite an expense. We do about 50 tonne of grit a month. So that's quite a bit of grit to get rid of. Quite a sort of smelly job there. So that gets screened out. The solids that are in the bottom of these tanks get sent into our digesters. So you're digesting for about 2 days in our acid digesters before it goes into our methane gas digesters for anywhere up to sort of 2 weeks. And that's much like your stomach temperature, 35, 36, 37 degrees, keeping happy. So got a lot of bugs to keep happy through this process. The solids then get sent to our day tank, and at the moment it's been cut in half. So we are sending, so we've got a tank that's being replaced, so we're just holding back what we can and dewatering as we go. So we're a little bit exposed at the moment, but it's all programmed this time of year. So we've got a good news story with our solids. They go to a worm farm in Tokoroa. So that's a really good story. It's about $1.5 million a year, and it's not going to slow down anytime soon. So that's a real good news story for us, because previously it went to Horatu or Hampton Downs. So it's a good. So Mainoki is the company. They turn stuff that you don't want to deal with into real good soils. They sell them commercially, domestically. So that's really good. So that's the solid train. That sort of heads off to Tokoroa, so we're happy about that. About 45 tonnes a day of wet solids, so a lot. Liquid-wise, liquid goes this way as our sort of settling tanks. carries through and gets pumped up because it's run out of energy by the time it's come through from Hamilton, gets into our basins, our bioreactors. This is where all the bugs do their magic. So mixed liquor, if you look under this stuff in a microscope, there's just billions of bugs. It's freaky. It's like aliens. They're in us, so they come from us, so they do all the hard work. And so liquid, we're building another one of these. So the Puketi 3 upgrade is to give us liquid and nutrient removal capacity. We're putting another basin in where those cranes are, another clarifier, and that's just to get us through to cope with the growth and to make sure we're compliant with our resource consent. So that just gives us that capacity. So the liquids go through into our bioreactors, into clarifiers. Now these things further separate any solid that may come through. So the solids will settle, get sent back to digestion. Our clearer liquid goes through into our UV, and that goes all the way under the park through. So you came down Puketi Road, down the bottom of the hill, into the river. There's a diffuser bank at the bottom of the river, and that gets injected into there. So 50 million litres a day of wastewater goes back to the river. So it's going to be, when the consent's up for renewal, so I know we've started work on that now, that's going to be quite a big deal. We're the only city that discharges inland. So to an inland waterway, not the sea, so they've got different conditions, different nutrient removal requirements. So yeah, it's going to be a big body of work. So that's basically what we do. It just comes in, everything comes in here and we deal with it. So flow-wise, 40 to 50 million. We have had flows in excess of 150 million litres come through on wet days. We're almost, it's that summer 1 in 100 storms we get is worse than winter at the moment, we're finding. So yeah, just that rain, this time of year is okay, it seems to be. It's that weird sort of time where we get those storms that appear. So we have on-site storage we can use. We very rarely bypass now. We used to, maybe once a year when we just cannot cope with 3,000 litres a second of water coming through. So designed to do that. So that's why the plant is by the side of the river as well. So we treat what we can, and we do store on site as well, and that gets returned back and put through. Yeah, so lots of interesting things come through, as you'd imagine. But this is our one plant for the foreseeable future.
So the plant operates 365 days, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Christmas Day, there's always someone watching, monitoring and accessing the plant. The teams that operate are highly passionate about what they do and what they do for the city in terms of the staff. So they are wastewater experts. And so if you can imagine you being yourself a wastewater expert and managing that every day, they're extremely passionate about what they do and highly skilled, particularly for New Zealand, recognised for what we do. So, and particularly in the region.
Yeah, we're a good sized city, enough, good population base, good technology to deal with what we have to deal with.
So if somebody sabotages this, we literally are in the pool, aren't we?
Yeah. one plant each activity at this stage.
Yeah. So what you see is we're a city of bridges, and so Chris loves building bridges, but our team loves them because they're actually covers for our wastewater and water pipes that go across the river. So they're actually the bridges are multifunctional, so they are how our water and wastewater network gets across.
So
our
how
beautiful
what's our backup then? Yeah. If it does pack up.
So our backup.
Yeah.
And we're planning for that. So that's where the metrospatial plan work, I think Jen talked about. In terms of our resilience, we're hugely aware of that with the one treatment plant for both water and wastewater, and we're working sub-regionally to actually determine, does Hamilton actually need to build another wastewater treatment plant, or as a region can we utilise what we've got together to build together, so that for Hamilton it wouldn't be would it be right for us to have 2 water treatment plants and 2 wastewater treatment plants just in case one didn't work or operate, and that resilience. So we're working through that at the moment, and that's a really good question, and that is something that we always monitor and plan for, and what do we do in that event. Yeah.
You put multi-barriers in place as well,
Yeah.
the water plant, multiple removal before it gets from river to things, that's the one source. So yeah, there are redundancies in there, and getting more liquid capacity is our issue at the moment, so we are building that right as we speak. So.
Yeah. Chris, did you have?
How much does it cost to run?
Oh, I've got some figures on
there we go.
there. Thanks tomorrow, by the way. Annual operational costs, so $20 million for wastewater, $18 million for the network. So this is forecast for this year. Revenue-wise, we do get money back through trade waste and cost recovery of about $4 million, so we are short, so that comes from rating. CapEx spend is going to be huge, $400 million in 10 years, $265 million here, and $135 in the network, so a big spend. And a lot of that is Puketi 3 right now.
I was just going to add to what Evelisa was saying. So this plant will not last forever.
No.
So this city has to face up to a new plant. Working sub-regionally is the best way to do it, but if you come onto council, that will be one of the key issues you've got to deal with, how we're going to plan and provide for our wastewater into the future. So this plant will not last. You can see the 4 cells there. There's 2 more spaces to go, and then the plants
run out of room. So we've got number 5, 6, and that's it.
Yeah.
Could be in the year.
So when you come on council, you'll hear a lot about looking at our 3 waters in a sub-regional sense, and that will be probably and will be the most cost-effective way to look at how we deal with this issue at a sub-regional sense, and looking at what's best for the Waikato River, and that will also be the key to get our consents, I think, if we work together and look at what's best for the Waikato River with timely and all iwi impact.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, this plant consumes a lot of power to run, all the pumps and things like that.
Lots of air, putting air and wastewater through the diffusers, getting oxygen into that water is very expensive.
Very expensive. The team, in terms of looking at how we do things differently, we do look at how we use gas and electricity together and off-peak, on-peak. This year we saved, just by optimising our operations, just over $200,000 just on those energy costs alone. So that's what we are doing to make sure we are running as efficiently as we possibly can. So it's not just about looking out in terms of what Hamilton can do, but it's also actually what can we do to maximise and keep our plant running as efficiently as possible.
Just to add on to that, like when we're out growing our community and working with developers, there's quite a lot of tension at times because quick, easy solutions for them are to put in pumping systems, which we end up looking after and got all of those energy costs. So Nevada for us is gravity. So we've got a great gravity system where we don't need energy to get to the plant, so maximising that. Sometimes it's not the cheapest upfront cost, but whole of life costing is cheaper for us, so that's what we try and do, use gravity as much as possible and only pump if we have to.
The main pipes that are feeding this, can you manage the flow through those? So they need to be increased in size and the likes? And is there
they're definitely sized appropriately. They're about, I think, 1.8 metres in diameter or plus. So twin mains come through, so there's an interceptor ring main throughout the city, much like the water system. So they're certainly sized well, and there's new mains at Rotokauri. So
One of our big projects we're doing at the moment is the Western Wastewater Interceptor duplication, so that's down the western side of State Avalon Drive. So it's the first big intervention for a long time, so our pipes have been on the size which are okay, but they are getting full rapidly, so we're duplicating. It's a $20 million plus project down there, which will sort out the western, will be a good anchor for the western side of the city for years to come. But it is a real problem for us in the pipe sizing as we grow.
Yeah, because often if you put a bigger pipe at one end of the city, then you need to make sure that then as our renewals program.
So how about with the infills going in? Is the pipe sizes able to cope with that?
So we have a whole series of things that we're looking at that are funded in our 10-year plan. So this big pipe duplication I'm talking about is one of them. You're going to, if you get into council, one of the first things that you'll come up against, part of our solution is building big wastewater storage tanks. So think of a reservoir, but not full of drinking water, full of other stuff. Because when it rains is our problem. When it rains and water gets into the system, if you don't got the capacity, it overflows. So we need to build big storage, and at the moment it's likely that we're going to want to put these under some of our parks in the city. It's what they do in Auckland. It doesn't sound great to have a big poo pipe under one of your parks, but it can be done really well, and it's the only way to do it. So when you come on the council, I think you'll be dealing with probably one of the first ones that we need to do to deal with that info issue.
Yeah, so building tanks instead of pipes. Yeah.
So where's the biggest storm?
Sorry, there was just someone behind you. I'll come back. Sorry.
In Sarah Thompson's picture, she talked about how the emissions data she had from council, the most recent data she could find was from 2001, and the wastewater treatment plant was the highest contributor to carbon emissions. I was wondering if you had done anything great in that time, because that is a really long time ago, but also you talked about energy usage. I don't know if that plays a large part in those carbon emissions, but I would think that because our electricity generation is 88% renewable, it would depend on how much gas you're using.
Yep, and that is a really technical question that I need to get back to you.
Yeah, so we run, so our hot water system that we have for our digesters to keep them stomach temperature is run through biogas. So we are using a lot. We do have a cogeneration engine on site, and we can run that. Sometimes it's cheaper to run on natural gas, just with the way the pricing is. So yeah, there's certainly a lot more we can do. We've looked at biogas storage and all sorts of things. Quite a dirty gas, a wet gas, a lot of sulphur, so good. So there's always, I know there's work in the background with our energy manager that's looking at a lot of that stuff. But yeah, it would have been power hungry as soon as the secondary plant came on board in 2001. None of us was here before 2001, so that's where all your power goes. That's like 4 council blocks a while ago, so the blowers are huge.
Are there any other aspects of wastewater which would contribute carbon emissions?
So it'd be purely power usage and digestion and gas and things like that, so it's all clear. So definitely room for efficiency and changing, but yeah, it's a good story, run our hot water at least on that, so more than enough.
So you said that what gets discharged into the river meets resource consent. That's fantastic, but actually how much nasty stuff still gets into the river, even if we're meeting that threshold?
In terms of viruses, hormones and nano
Stuff
stuff,
that's trashing the river.
nutrients are per consented limits, so they're different in summer and different in winter. E. coli wise is less than 10 most of the year round, which is probably 100 times less than what's in the river to start with.
Yeah.
So the Waikato River in my time at council, off and on for 15 odd years, has cleaned up a lot thanks to regional council, thanks to farmers and whatnot. So yeah, it is, on the best day this place runs, it's clear going out there. But there is things that we don't take out, so more of the nano stuff which will come into consent's future, but you're talking nano, billionth filtration type of thing, so would you add in other filters here eventually to capture, and that will come through with our newest consenting round, because I know they're going to start looking at viruses and hormone removal. So nutrient-wise, we're well under we have to dose chemicals in summer to get under that cap, so it's another reason for more liquid treatment. So there's still things that are going back in, but compared to
where we were.
We talked on the buses as well about stormwater. This is wastewater, but a big contributor to the health of the river is the quality of our stormwater systems. The big ones for the river are phosphorus and nitrogen. So a lot of our stormwater is focused around treatment trains to stop the phosphorus and nitrogen getting into the river, and it's the same big issue here as nitrogen and phosphorus as well.
Yeah, and nitrogen is very dependent on cold. So when it's really cold, our treatment plant bugs don't like the cold and don't like to take it. So we need to manage, and we have consenting limits to factor that in. On beautiful warm days, the bugs just are in heaven. So yeah, so when the Waikato cold days are challenges for us, particularly in May. Yeah.
What's the stormwater ingress into the wastewater system? Where's that coming from?
So we're looking into those in terms of our inflow and infiltration. So the stormwater ingress could be pipe joints that have split apart in the ground and stormwater going in. There could be some gully traps, illegal connections, someone putting their...
And tree roots.
Yeah.
Because on those high flow days, you can just see it's just water, coloured water, but it's just crazy.
And when we know that when we take 55,000 litres a day, million litres from the water plant, and we end up discharging 80 million litres, you're going, where's it coming from? And so it's our building, our plumbers and connecting, just making sure that we're all connecting into the right places is huge for us.
In the budget, there's quite a big portion set aside for these upgrades for the next 10 years in long-term planning. With the resource consents being 2027, that would fall within that. Is some of that portion looking ahead to perhaps any, I guess I'm asking, will there be any analysis advisors in 2027 with resource consents?
I think, knowing what I know with the consenting process, we are kind of locked into a design model that we've already got. It's not like you've got a greenfield saying we're going to, here's what coming in, is what we want out. So I think we are down a path where we won't change. It'll be a 6 clarified, 6 basin, there won't be any, I don't think so. However, they may look at the Waikato River as a whole catchment. We've got Cambridge not far away, with a, so it's looking, they may look at a sub-regional. I can't see any, we are locked into a design that is fine.
So the last resource consent we got was in 2006 with the new consent. So and then and so as part of that consent, there was a phased process. We weren't required to meet those consent compliance requirements straight away because they factored in the treatment plant upgrades and the time it takes to actually meet those levels. So there are those phased approaches which then allow us time to plan and balance what we need and plan and program the rest of the city together. So, and then education, like everybody in this room has a role to play in what ends up in this plant and how we manage that, and it's around getting that word out there to say, hey, our wastewater drains are only for the water-free things, rather than the flushable wipes and things like that, or fats and oils and grease. It's around how we actually, ourselves and our behaviour as to what we put down our drains.
We get lots of schools coming through, and that's the message. It's good, right from little to university.
Would you say that the water you're putting back in is better or worse than the water you're taking out?
Better.
Better.
In terms of E. coli, definitely E. coli. Probably other it's one of those things, how far do you look at it? But
The window, you can just see it. So that lake is a peat lake. Waikato has the biggest collection of peat lakes in New Zealand, but they have been under threat. Well, they are under threat. So Waiwhakariki is a really important ecological restoration project. It's important too. Peat lakes are really unique ecological environments. So with the loss of peat lakes, we're actually losing quite a lot of unique native flora and fauna. So Waiwhakariki is really important to the biodiversity of Hamilton. We only have 1.6% remaining indigenous native flora and fauna. So since 2004, 150,000 trees have been planted in Waiwhakariki. There's 60 hectares of land to be planted there. And just last year, I can't remember how many, but many trees, wasn't it, on the community planting day. So a lot of community investment into Waiwhakariki, funds raised via the Waiwhakariki Advisory Group and Tui 2000. When I first moved to Hamilton over nearly 30 years ago, we had to, there was you didn't have to, but a Tui 2000 were asking for people to call in whenever you saw a Tui. There were very few Tui in Hamilton at that time. But as a result of projects like this, we've seen a huge increase in Tui. Planting days every year. It's utilised for research. And it hasn't been formally open to the public, but council invested funding into it over this last financial year. So putting in pathways and a platform to the lake and a toilet down by the lake. And from October, that will be open to the it's a valued community asset. We have over 130,000 visitors a year to Hamilton Zoo. It's actually got the have many of you been to the zoo? Yeah. So it's actually got the largest land mass in New Zealand. So it's actually one of the bigger zoos. It hasn't got the most animals, but it has got the greatest area of land, and there is actually room to develop it further. As you can see, our entranceway does belie what's behind it. So there is a project plan to create a better visitor arrival experience. Some of our visitor destinations include the Hamilton Gardens, we've got the Waikato Museum, and we've also got the Hamilton Zoo. And people know about Hamilton Gardens, and it's seen as one of the jewels in the crown. Provides an amazing visitor experience, but we also have some other great assets. So it's our view that we'd also like to see some development of the Hamilton Zoo so that people know that it's here and have a great experience when they visit here, and that way we can increase our numbers and revenue over time. So in years, I think next year and the following year, we're planning to build a new arrival centre. It's a partnership project. We are seeking external funding, so the timing of that will actually be dependent on our success with external funding. So that may be sooner or later. Any questions on the zoo? So the other key part of the zoo is that we're wanting to get a connected experience with Waiwhakariki. So as I said, that becomes open to the public in October, but that is a long-term intergenerational project. It'll take many, many years for Waiwhakariki to be fully restored. But it has huge educational value in the meantime. So the zoo and Waiwhakariki, a lot of what they offer is education to current and future generations on the value of biodiversity and conservation. So as well as the entry precinct, we're looking at upgrading this car park and the car park across the road. On high visitation days, weekends and public holidays, our car parks are overflowing. And we've just got a paddock across the road pretty much. So we're looking at improving those and also having kind of educational sites throughout the zoo and also throughout Waiwhakariki.
Native animals are in the zoo. How much of the zoo's work is around looking after our native species versus rhinos we're babysitting?
Yeah. So at the moment that's fairly limited. We do have tuatara, but most of them are exotic species. The opportunity with Waiwhakariki is actually to increase and develop our breed and release program, so that is the intention there.